again, everybody. If you have your Bibles this morning, you can turn with me to Mark chapter 12, or your devices, or however it is that you read the Bible nowadays. Mark chapter 12, we'll be looking at verses 18 through 34, the ignorance of the religious. I find that to be the case. Anytime people are religious, they seem to be ignorant, especially ignorant of God's grace, His mercy, the way He works in our lives, and how much He cares for us. It just boils down to just being religious and doing things in order to attempt to earn your way into heaven, or earn salvation, which is not the way we're to be. And so Jesus is going to deal with some of that, and we'll see what He gives us here. And so in verses 18 through 34, it says, "And some of the Sadducees who were there, who say there is no resurrection, came to him, and they asked him, saying, 'Teacher, Moses wrote to us that if a man's brother dies and leaves his wife behind and leaves no children, his brother should take his wife and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife, and dying, he left no offspring. And the second took her, and he died, and nor did he have any offspring. And the third likewise. So the 7 had her and left no offspring. Last of all, the woman died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, when they rise, whose wife will she be? For all 7 had her as wife.' Jesus answered and said to them, 'Are you not therefore mistaken, because you do not know the Scriptures nor the power of God? For when they rise from the dead, they will neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. But concerning the dead, that they rise, have you not read the book of Moses in the burning bush passage, how God spoke to him, saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? He is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. You are therefore greatly mistaken.' Then one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, 'Which is the first commandment of all?' And Jesus answered him, 'The first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like it is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these.' So the scribe said to him, 'Well said, teacher, you have spoken truth, for there is one God, and there is no other but He. And to love Him with all the heart, and with all the understanding, and with all the soul, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself is more than all the whole burnt offerings and sacrifices.' Now, when Jesus saw that he answered wisely, he said to them, 'You are not far from the kingdom of God.' But after that, no one dared question him." So, Father, we look to your word this morning, asking you, God, to teach us, Lord, that we might not be far from the kingdom of God. We want to be able to not just answer you well, Lord, but answer those who ask us about you and what it is that they need to know to find you and to have salvation in your name. And so we ask that you would bless us as we look to your word this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. And so the religious leaders, you guys remember, had just finished questioning the authority of Jesus earlier, or later in chapter 11 and on into chapter 12 here. After he had cleansed the temple of the corruption that was taking place, they wanted to know by what authority he was doing these things. And they were in the court of the Gentiles at the time, and so they were all incensed that he went in and took what they were doing to make money off of people and rip people off and flipping over the tables and making things right. They were all upset about that in Mark chapter 11, verse 27 and 28. And Jesus answered the scribes and the chief priests, if I can spit it out, by answering them and asking them a question and saying, the baptism of John, where did it come from? Was it from heaven or from men? And so that was in Mark chapter 11, verse 29 through 32. And of course, the obvious answer there is from heaven. It came from heaven. Jesus was like leading them to make the right answer. But instead, they decided to play games and not answer them, and they answered him, and they went back and forth, and so they said, we don't know. And so he said, well, I'm not going to answer you then. And that was just Jesus and the way he handled these religious leaders. Their refusal to answer him was just not something that was good. It was weird for them not to answer his question. They feared that giving him the answer to their question would cause him to shut them down. There in Mark chapter 11, verse 33. So this led to Jesus rebuking the religious leaders by way of the parable. You guys remember the beginning of chapter 12, verse 1 through 11. He spoke to them about the parable of the vineyard and the landowner and the vine dressers and the whole thing. And so it really spoke to the religious leaders and caused them to understand that he was talking about them. He was speaking about them and how evil they were, how wicked they were being. So they attempted to grab him in order to kill him in Mark chapter 12, verse 12. Of course, this is all because nothing says, that we're not like the wicked vine dressers, like we're going to kill you, Jesus, for saying we are, right? Because that was their whole thing. Jesus calls them out for it. And so he tells them, you guys are just like these guys in this parable. And then in order to prove him wrong, they attempt to grab him and kill him. It's just weird. Exactly what he had talked about in the parable, now they're attempting to do. And so then we have, of course, the Pharisees who tried to trap him with the Herodians about a question concerning taxes in Mark chapter 12, verse 13 through the beginning of verse 15. And Jesus knew what they were up to, though. And so he answered them in a way that checked their hearts, that caused them to see, look, you aren't doing what you should be doing for God. Render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. And so if Caesar's image is on the coin, give it to him. But you guys aren't even doing the things you're supposed to do. You're not even rendering your service to the Lord. You're not even making the sacrifices correctly to the Lord. You're not walking right with the Lord. You're not ministering to the people. So you're asking me about taxes when you're not even doing what's right in the sight of God in terms of following him. Of course, that caused them to marvel. There at the end of the middle of chapter 12, there, verse 15, towards the end through 17. And now we'll see the ignorance of these same religious people on full display as they once again attempt to trap Jesus with questions that they think he can't answer. Listen, if they're already marveling at Jesus concerning the way he answered certain questions already, the way he taught, the way he expelled demons, the way he healed the sick, the way he raised the dead, then what makes them think that any more questions are going to do them any good? But of course, they're ignorant. And so in their ignorance, they think they're smarter than Jesus. And they'll find out that they're not. So in verses 18 and 19, the Sadducees set up their question. Then some Sadducees who say there's no resurrection, which is why they're sad, you see, came to him and they asked him, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote to us that if a man's brother dies and leaves his wife behind and leaves no children, his brother should take his wife and raise up offspring for his brother. So his brother would have an inheritance, right? His brother's family. So the Sadducees came to Jesus with this question concerning the resurrection, which is ridiculous because they don't believe in the resurrection anyway, so they're trying to set up this straw man argument where they can try and prove that there's no resurrection and trick Jesus. Even though they don't believe in it, you can tell as they ask the question that they're super insincere. Their insincerity of these religious Sadducees could not be more apparent as they attempt to show Jesus, as they show him contempt even, as they ask about the resurrection that they don't believe in. They want to know. The Sadducees began their question by referring to Jesus as teacher. Again, they don't believe him to be a teacher. They don't believe him to be a rabbi. They believe him to be a rabble-rouser and somebody who's interfering with what it is that they do. And so they're all these things that they're doing, all the things that they're asking are absolutely contradictory to what it is that they believe. They don't believe in the resurrection, and they don't believe Jesus to be a teacher. And so they're just trying to butter him up or whatever it is that they're trying to do. They weren't calling Jesus teacher out of some form of respect. They weren't acknowledging him as somebody who was teaching the people something that was beneficial for their lives. The Sadducees were basically trying to discredit Jesus at this point with their question by exposing what they thought to be flaws in the resurrection, in the belief of the resurrection. The Sadducees, again, they didn't respect or accept that there was a resurrection. They didn't believe in it because they only believed in the Torah. Again, the Torah consists of the first 5 books of the Bible, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's the Torah. All the books of Moses. And so that's all they believed in. They didn't consider the rest of the Old Testament scriptures where it talks in volumes about the resurrection. And so they looked at these 5 books of the Bible and how they don't reference the resurrection in there and said, there's no such thing as a resurrection. You guys are crazy for believing it. The earliest reference to the resurrection that we can point to is in Job. Job chapter 19, verse 25 through 27, where it says, "For I know that my Redeemer lives." And the second I heard that, I thought of that Crystal Lewis song, right? "For I know my Redeemer lives, and in the end, he shall reign on the earth." And so it just went through my head. I just shared that with Annika and played it on YouTube. It was great. It was just an awesome time. Anyway, so I know my Redeemer lives, and he will stand at last on the earth. And after my skin is destroyed, this I know, that in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. How my heart yearns within me. But just because we lack the ability to see the resurrection in the Torah, or they lack the ability, doesn't mean it's not there. And in fact, Jesus makes reference to that coming up here when he talks about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And so even while it may not specifically point out the resurrection in the Torah, it's there. And so the Sadducees quoted the words of Moses from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 25, verse 5 and 6. Again, it's up there. "This law was meant to protect a man's wife and his family's name by providing him an heir and an inheritance at his death." This is what that was for. The Sadducees thought if they would be able to trap Jesus with the scriptures, but much like the rest of the religious leaders, they didn't really realize who they were dealing with. They didn't understand who Jesus was. And so to try and trap, listen, if you're going to try and trap somebody with a biblical question, don't make it Jesus, right? Don't try and trap Jesus. He's going to answer you and you're going to feel dumb, or at least you should. And so in verses 20 through 23, the Sadducees go about their ridiculous question, and I mean, it's one of those where they must have really put a lot of time and effort and thought into this because it's so absurd, right? And so there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife, and dying, he left no offspring. The second took her, and he died, nor did he leave any offspring, and the third likewise. So the 7 had her, and with no offspring. Last of all, the woman died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, when they rise, whose wife will she be? For all 7 had her as a wife. Gotcha, Jesus. That question is just crazy on its face, right? The Sadducees begin by prefacing their question with this statement. There were 7 brothers, right? There's 7 brothers. The first took a wife, died, had no offspring. The second brother took her, and the same thing happened. And likewise with the third, all the way through the 7. And then she dies, right? The very premise of the Sadducees' question was absolutely ridiculous on its face, because the fact that their brothers were dead, right? The first brother, the second brother, the third brother, all the way, right? There's no way in God's green earth, right, that the rest of these guys would have married this black widow, right? Because that's basically what she was. She had the first brother, he died, the second and the third, maybe they'll try it. But the fourth through the seventh, no way. It ain't going to happen. They're going to say, you got to be kidding. What is she cooking them? What is she making? And then last of all, of course, she dies. Furthermore, the rest of the men in town probably rejoiced at the passing of this woman because none of them would have opportunity to marry her and die, right? I mean, it was just all the way around. Just the story was just crazy to even think that this would happen. The Sadducees' question is misguided because it assumes that resurrection life, which they don't believe in, will be exactly the same as the life that we're living now. It assumes that things won't be different. It assumes that everything is going to be the way it is, as it always was, and will continue down that path. And we all know that not to be true. Resurrection life will be so much different. For us, we understand that if you die, to be absent from the body means to be present with the Lord at some point during, after the rapture takes place. We'll all get our glorified bodies. If you get raptured, then you'll get your glorified body then. And then, and so we understand these things from a biblical principle. Now, they may not have fully understood that back then, but there were things that explained and spoke of the resurrection that they could actually point to. Look in the book of Psalms. We talked about Job. It was there. So the Sadducees' purpose for asking Jesus this question was to reveal what they believed to be a serious flaw in the teaching of the resurrection. And Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 20 through 25, "Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through wisdom did not know God, it pleased God through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. For Jews request a sign, and Greeks seek after wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, to the Jews a stumbling block, and to the Greeks foolishness. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God, because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men." God is stronger and smarter than anybody. And in his infinite wisdom, he laid out the plan of salvation from the foundation of the earth. And that there would be a resurrection in that. What is the point? I'll just ask, you guys can mull it over in your heads and answer it, on your own. What is the point of living this life for God if all you're going to do is die and cease to exist? Paul asked that question, right? So he says, if we believe in the resurrection, there's no resurrection of the dead, then we're of most men to be pitied. We might as well just eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. What is the point in living for God if there is no resurrection from the dead? If we just go off into the ether, right, and cease to exist, what is the point? You might as well just go out and live however you want. But the fact remains that there is a point, because there is a resurrection. And we need to be on the right side of which resurrection we're going to get, right? And so the wisdom of God is far beyond our ability to comprehend. The Sadducees believed that they had set the perfect trap for Jesus with this elaborate question, but as we'll see, it didn't faze him in the slightest. In fact, in verses 24 through 27 here, Jesus corrects the Sadducees' way of thinking. Jesus answered and said to them, "Are you not therefore mistaken?" Right? And that's just a polite way of saying, you're just wrong and dumb. What's wrong with you, right? So, aren't you mistaken? Because you don't know the scriptures or the power of God, for when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but they're like the angel, like angels in heaven. But concerning the dead, that they rise. Have you not read the book of Moses in the burning bush passage? How God spoke to him saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. Are you therefore greatly mistaken? You're not just mistaken, but you are so extremely mistaken that you have no idea what it is that you're talking about. And he refers to the book of Moses. Well, it's not talking about the book of Moses. He's talking about the Torah, of course. And so Jesus informs the Sadducees that they're mistaken when it comes to the inner workings of the resurrection. Because you do not understand, he says, the scriptures nor the power of God. They don't understand. They read the Torah, they think they understand it, and in the Torah, you can see the resurrection. But yet they can't figure it out because they don't want to see it. There's a difference between being deceived and being willfully deceived, right? Somebody can trick you, and then you can just want to be tricked, right? And it all depends on what it is you're trying to get out of the situation. The Sadducees to this point could have just been deceived, thinking to themselves that there's no resurrection in the Torah. Well, now Jesus points it out. And when Jesus points it out, now they become willfully ignorant of it. No longer can you say, well, I just didn't know. Well, now you've been told, and now you want to continue. And it's the same thing with talking to people about Jesus and showing them in the scriptures what the Bible says. People are either ignorant of the fact that Jesus came to die for them, but when you point it out to them, no longer can they plead ignorance because it's right there in front of them. What God has done. Jesus said earlier, right? I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. Now, does that mean there's other ways to get around that? No. So if you read that scripture, you understand it, now you're accountable to it. And no longer can you say, I didn't realize that Jesus was the only way, because there you have it. And no pleading ignorance. These again, the Sadducees here were the teachers of the law, along with the Pharisees. These guys were teaching people the scriptures, and yet they were totally ignorant when it came to the scriptures and what it speaks concerning the resurrection. The Torah spoke of the miracles that God had done, but the Sadducees refused to believe that God could raise the dead. Now, you're looking at a God who created the earth and hung it on nothing in 6 days, right? Everything on the earth, created the earth, everything done in 6 days. 7th day, he said, well, I could do more, but I'm just going to rest, right? I mean, imagine if he didn't take that 7th day off, how great things would be, right? So much better. But he took the day off. Said, here we go, Sabbath day of rest, I'm good. And the God that could create everything, create you and I out of the dust of the ground, create a planet that if it were any closer to the sun, we'd all burn to death, and if it were any further away, we'd freeze, right? I mean, all the things that he did to make the universe, to make you, to make me, the little miracle that you hold in your hands, right, after you give birth, all the things that God has done. And yet for them to say that, well, God can't resurrect the dead. That can't happen. That's what you have a problem with? I mean, Jesus himself raised a couple people from the dead, And you're going to say he can't do that? God can't do that? The miracles in your own life, no matter how great or small, the things that God has done, the fact that you know Jesus is a great miracle in and of itself. The fact that the Holy Spirit dwells within you, once again, just an incredible miracle. But God can't raise the dead. There's no resurrection. Jesus made it clear that our relationship with one another will be different in heaven. And this is the point he makes to them. You guys came up with this question. Okay, I'm going to play along. but I'm just going to let you know that the point is that the relationship that we have in heaven is different than it is here on earth. We're told in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 42 through 49. So also is the resurrection of the dead. The body is sown in corruption. It is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. And so it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam, which is Jesus, became a life-giving spirit. However, the spiritual is not first, but the natural, and afterward the spiritual. The first man was of the earth, made of the dust. The second man is the Lord from heaven. As was the man of dust, so also are those who are made of dust. And as it is the heavenly man, so also are those who are heavenly. And as we have bore the image of the man of dust, we also bear the image of the heavenly man. Right? So, not only are we flesh like Adam, but then Jesus came and now we are spirit as well. And so if your flesh be destroyed, your spirit will continue to go on and you will see God. And so this is what Jesus is explaining to them. And the Sadducees had failed in their understanding of the scriptures because they didn't take the whole counsel of God. They only believed in the Torah. They didn't look at the entirety of the Old Testament, which at this point would be called the scriptures, right? Because there's no New Testament yet. And so because of that, they only took those first 5 books and believed that because that contained the law. And that's where the law was and where the law came from. Alan Carr wrote, while the relationship of marriage is a wonderful and divine ordained institution, it is also absolutely earthly institution. Marriage was designed for companionship, continuation of the species, and for the fulfillment of legitimate sexual needs. When we get to heaven, we will be like angels, only in the sense that we will be spiritual beings that will have no need for the physical necessities of this earthly life. In heaven, like the angels, we will be deathless, sinless, sexless, glorified, and eternal. But unlike the angels, we will be like Jesus. Life will be different when we get there. There will be no need for reproduction and childbirth because there will be no death. There will be no exclusive physical relationships like there are here, because in heaven everyone will be perfectly and intimately related to everyone else, including God. So we will all be different. The relationships that we have now will be different. You will likely know the people that you know in some way, but your relationship with your spouse will not be the same. Your relationship with your kids will not be the same. It will be changed. In fact, it'll be better. So the Torah may not have made a direct reference to the resurrection of the dead, but Jesus points out that in Exodus chapter 3, and it's not there, that God spoke in verse 26 to Moses saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And then he goes on to say, even though these guys were dead at the time, Jesus spoke about them as if they were still living. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Not I was, right? So the Sadducees were greatly mistaken when it came to their thoughts concerning the resurrection. The word mistaken here means to be in error from what is right due to self-deception. They were self-deceived. Jesus calls them out for it. Once you're self-deceived and then it's been explained to you, and again, at that point, you have no excuse to continue to believe what you're believing. But the Sadducees could not let it go. They continued down that path. We're told in Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Listen, they were deceived. Their heart deceived them. And the only one that knows the depths of our deception is God. You may think you know, but you don't know. I don't know. I can be deceived way more than I think I can. I may think I'm on it and I'm on top of things and nobody's going to trick me or look, we all get scammed at one time or another, right? You all get those emails or text messages, telling you that they want to give you $1 million if only you'll send them $10 or $2,000 or whatever it is, right? We all get those weird scam type emails from our bank and from our credit card companies for people fishing for your information. Some people, give into it because they think it's legit, others don't. But we are not all aware of the deception that comes our way all the time. And the enemy is crafty. And I like that quote from Charles Spurgeon because honestly, it really rings true in the church today is that, the difference between discernment is not the difference between right and wrong. It's knowing the difference between right and almost right. Right? There's a way that things sound, the way people speak forth things concerning the Word of God that seems right. You're like, man, that sounds right. But then your spirit's like, but there's something off about that, right? And then there's other people who just, yes, give it to me. Yes, the Spirit, I can jump up and down and bark and do all these other things and roll on the carpet and do whatever I got to do, And it's all spiritual. It's not. Some of it's deception, it's distraction. Some of it is us looking to bring attention to ourselves, whatever it might be. There are many people who have convinced themselves, not just the Sadducees, but other people, that there's no resurrection from the dead. And most of that is because they don't want to change the way they're living. Prior to Christ, I didn't grow up in the church. I wasn't a church person. I remember going to, Jehovah's Witness church one time, a Mormon church one time, a Catholic church one time. I know my dad was looking for something, but he didn't know what he was looking for. And I told you guys before that U2 song, when it plays, I still haven't found what I'm looking for, reminds me of him every time. Because I know he was looking for something, but he never found it. And so as you look and as you're, in this place as a person, I remember thinking to myself, I believe that when you die, there's nothing. You just cease to exist. And I don't know why I felt that way. And I think part of it may have been because I didn't want to come and have that reality check that there is a hell, and there is a heaven. And if I don't choose Jesus, then my resurrection is going to be that of hell. That is where I'm going to end up in eternity. And I know, people don't want to change the way they live. They don't want to change the way they think. They would rather just believe that there's nothing after death. And there's a lot of people right now. There's some people, I don't know, they made shirts or they made something that said, God bless abortion. It's just awful. And they make these things and they don't understand that they're heaping condemnation on themselves because they don't believe that there's a resurrection of the dead. If you believe that, there's no way in life, no way you would ever do those things. Your life would be different. You would not be living for the flesh, because many of these same people that end up not believing that there's a resurrection because they don't want to. They believe in things just cease to exist. You die and that's it, or they believe in reincarnation, or they believe in whatever they believe, right? Some of them have an experience where they meet Christ. Paul had that experience, right? He was killing Christians. He met Jesus Christ on the Damascus Road, and his life was changed in the blink of an eye. And so when they meet Jesus, they become the most on fire people you've ever met, because they just can't believe how deceived they were, how they allowed themselves. How can I have been so deceived? Because, as Jesus said, they were greatly mistaken, right? They were self-deceived. They bought into the lie. Jesus said this to his disciples about the coming judgment. In John chapter 5, verse 28 and 29, do not marvel at this, for the hour is coming in which all who are in the graves will hear his voice and come forth, those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of condemnation. So there is a resurrection, but you and I have to choose a side. Listen, I know sometimes, things in this world feel kind of heavy, and it's like you choose the wrong side. It's kind of like when your team is whatever sports team you like, whatever type of sports you like, whether it's NBA or NFL or Major League Baseball. It's like when your team makes it to the World Series or the NBA playoffs or to the Super Bowl, and you're right there on the cusp. I mean, you are outpacing the other team, and you're ahead by a big number, and then all of a sudden you just mail it in and they catch up and pass you and win, and you're just like devastated, because your team lost. Understand that the team you're on, if you know Jesus, wins. No matter what happens in this life, no matter how defeated you feel, no matter how much this life can be overwhelming at times, and you feel like you're just getting the raw end of the deal, understand that you have already won. Because Jesus beat back death and the grave. And he has won. He is risen. Now you and I, we just have to walk with him, so that you and I can have the resurrection of life, and try and grab as many people with us who are headed for the resurrection of the dead. Right? We have to. You don't want people to go to that resurrection of condemnation, because they don't have to. The truth is there. They just have to embrace it. They have to understand it. But in order for them to understand it, somebody's got to be able to share it with them. And in many cases, that's you. That's me. Can't just pray that the Lord, I pray that you bring somebody into this person's life. Well, that person's you. The Lord already brought you into their life, so have at it, right? It's easier for people to believe that death is the end of all things, because that way they don't have to change the way they're living. And they can feel good about it and live life free of conviction. And it's a sad place to be in. Jesus was clearly speaking here about the immortality of the soul, because he says that we follow the God of the living and not the God of the dead. Right? Is your God alive or is he dead? If you're following a dead God, Muhammad, Joseph Smith, whatever, he was a prophet, but many people viewed him as sort of L. Ron Hubbard, whatever, whoever you're following, if it is not Jesus, they are dead. Jesus is the only one who has risen from the dead and never died again. Now he is seated at the right hand of the Father, ever making intercession for you and I. In verse 28, Jesus speaks with the scribe, who asks him a question as well. Excuse me. Then one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, "What's the first commandment of all?" Jesus finished answering the Sadducees' question. No sooner was he done with that than one of the scribes who heard him asked, "Which commandment is the greatest?" The scribes, if you guys remember, if you know, they were lawyers. And you know how most people think about lawyers, right? So they were there. They were like ambulance chasers. They're sitting there listening to Jesus talk to the Sadducees, and then before you know it, as soon as they saw him just annihilate the Sadducees, they got a question of their own. They're going to jump in. They're just going to try and do the same. Which is the greatest commandment? Let's hear it. The scribes, again, they were lawyers that specialized in matters concerning the law of Moses. The question was yet another attempt by the religious leaders to get Jesus to say something that was unpopular with the people, that went against the law of Moses. So they had something by which to accuse him of, and then jail him or put him to death. The religious leaders of that day added 613 laws to the Ten Commandments, some of which are absolutely absurd. If your wife burns your toast, you can write her a certificate of divorce. That was a law. That was something they could do. You know? If she displeased you in any way, you can give her a certificate of divorce and you're done. Send her packing. So God gave Moses the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai. He comes back down off the mountain, you guys remember. And he was gone so long that people began to think that Moses is dead. What are we going to do? We need to worship God. And so they all grabbed, so instead of worshiping God, the true and living, they all grabbed their jewelry and their gold and everything. They put it in a pot, they melt it down, and they make this animal out of it. And they begin to worship. Much like as we're going through Amos, right? Jeroboam the first makes these idols and puts them in Bethel and Dan for the people to worship, because he was afraid that if the people from the northern kingdom of Israel went to where the southern the kingdom of Israel was, and its place being Jerusalem where they all worship, that they would turn back and they would go back to Jerusalem, and then they would come and they would kill him. So he was afraid of that. So in order to stop that from happening, he made these images, these calves, or whatever they were, these idols. And he placed them there and said, here, you go there to worship and there to worship. And they did. The people did. Crazy. And so, much like that, Aaron puts all this stuff in a pot, melts it down, and there's a calf, or whatever it is. So Moses comes back down, sees that the people are worshiping idols, drops the Ten Commandments and breaks them, the originals. And of course, there's no Kinkos or anything like that back then. So, however they were made, whether it was, Flintstone style with a hammer and chisel, or whether God just did it by lightning, who knows, however he did it. Moses looks and goes, what are you doing? And Aaron's like, instead of saying, we didn't know you were there, and then the people, and I felt pressured, and I did this, and then repenting, Aaron said, we just, put this stuff in there, boom, out popped a calf. Yeah, okay. So Moses had to go back up, get another set of commandments, and come back down with them. But to those 10 commandments, they added 613 laws. Because those 10 weren't enough, right? You can't even follow the 10. Who here follows perfectly the 10 commandments every day? Okay, let me back it up. Half a day. Can I get 3 hours? Moment by moment? Maybe. It's hard enough to follow 10, and they thought to themselves, that's not enough. Because that's how religious people think. Religious people think that if I do something, I will get something. And if I do my part to walk with God, I will get salvation for it. Rather than, or favor from God. Rather than understanding that salvation is a free gift, and what you do, whether good, well, especially good, is a byproduct of what it is that you were given. Somebody hands you a gift, you want to do nice, hug them, tell them thank you, all that. If they hand you a gift and you slap them in the face, I mean, that's just weird, right? The byproduct of somebody giving you something is to say thank you. Now, don't give me your trash that's broken or whatever and you don't want to throw out and you just, here, take this. And it's like, now I have to throw it out, but you say thank you in the meantime. You know, but you understand what I'm saying, right? The byproduct of that free gift of salvation is to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself, as Jesus is telling them. So, this scribe wanted to know from Jesus which was the greatest commandment. What was the first one? Those that are moral and those that have put a heightened emphasis on ritual, but the answer that he got wasn't the answer he expected. They put all this emphasis on doing in order to earn that what he got from Jesus was not what he expected to get from Jesus. In verses 29 through 31, Jesus answers his question. Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like it. Like it is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There are no other commandments greater than these. This is what Jesus tells him. Again, he was probably thinking, some form of what can I do? Like in the 313, which one of those is the one? I mean, giving money, Lord? Tithing? I give so much. Didn't that earn me a position in heaven? I do so much for people. I'm so kind and humble, right? Doesn't that earn me a spot into heaven? This is what he wanted to hear. Jesus told the scribe that the first commandment was to know the Lord their God and to love him with all their heart, soul, and mind and strength. Because if you don't get that right, the rest doesn't matter. If you don't get the fact that you need to love God first, and the only reason that you and I can love God is because he first loved us, if you can't get that right, then the rest doesn't even matter. Again, this is the Shema of Israel he's speaking of, which means, the word Shema means to hear. So they were to hear and understand and know who the Lord their God was or is, right? This is what they were to know. And every good religious Jew knew the Shema of Israel. And so, not only did they know it, but they would repeat it every morning and every evening. It was religious and ritualistic, like everything else. God doesn't want a ritualistic and that type of relationship with you. He doesn't want his relationship with you to be robotic. I get up at this time and I say my prayers, and then I read my Bible, and I do this, and then I do this, and then before I go to bed, I lay me down to sleep, I pray to the Lord myself, right? He doesn't want that. What he wants is you to talk to him. He wants you to have a conversation with him. He wants you to pour out your heart to him. He wants to have a relationship. Are the relationships that you have with people in your sphere of influence, are they robotic? Or are they meaningful? Do you have friends that you can talk to and pour out your heart to? Do you have people that you know who may not be friends but are willing to hear you out and listen to you and pray for you? I mean, these relationships that we have should not be robotic. They're born out of love and understanding and mutual respect for one another. And it's the same type of thing with our relationship with God. He sent his son to die for us, that we can have a relationship with him that is not based upon the law, not based upon me doing everything that I can do in order to earn my way into heaven. And for whatever I do that's off, then I sacrifice an animal to shed the blood, because without the shedding the blood, there's no remission of sins. That is not the relationship that God wants with you. He wants a relationship. But look, you don't have to get on your knees and pray every day and just, that's the only time. When you're in your car, when you're walking, when you're having a moment where you're in your own head and just trying to get right, things right with the Lord. I mean, any time can be spent with the Lord. This is what he wants. He doesn't want this repeating that the whole, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. I'm going to repeat that every morning and every evening. I'm going to say the 10 Commandments. Jesus gave us the model prayer, right? It's just, it's not something that you repeat word for word. It's a way by which you and I have ground rules or some sort of diagram as to what we should be. Give God thanks first for all the blood before you go into, I need this, I need that, I need that, right? But inevitably, we start, thank you, Lord, for your blessings, and I just pray you would bless me more, and I need this, Lord. And that's the way it goes for us, because we're selfish. God wants us to have this relationship with him that is based upon his love, and that love is that his son came and died for us. The act of knowing and loving God is the most important thing any of us can do, because it defines how you and I live our lives. You can go out, you can look at the news, you can look at, you can go anywhere around Ventura even, and you can tell to some degree, of course you're not judging salvation, so let's get that clear, but you can see that person loves God. Not so much over there, You can tell somewhat, because we'll know people by their fruit. Some people's fruit is good, some fruit is rotten. Some of my fruit is good, some of my fruit is rotten. But you can look and you can see those people who, to some degree, are living for the Lord and those who are not. And you can certainly see it in our political leaders today and everything else. So, Jesus not only gave this scribe the first and most important commandment, but he also gave him the second one. We're to love our neighbors as ourselves, which shouldn't be too hard, seeing as how we love ourselves way too much to begin with. Paul said this concerning the way husbands should love their wives. And again, this doesn't mean the wives are off the hook, but let's just go with the husbands. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 29. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourished and cherished it, just as the Lord does the church. That is the way in which we are to love our wives. Is it hard? Yes. But if it was easy, then, I don't even know what. It wouldn't be worth it. There are those who you know, and I know, who claim to hate themselves. You ever met somebody like that? I've said it to myself, before, because I know myself to some degree. When I do something moronic, I super hate myself right now, But that doesn't prevent me from getting up and taking a shower and getting dressed and looking decent, brushing my teeth to not offend anybody, putting deodorant on, making sure I look good. It doesn't prevent me from getting out of bed, feeding myself. So my hatred for myself at times, how much is that actually hatred? Because it looks like I love myself. Because if you hated yourself, you would just, you guys ever seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? And Cameron, right? When he said, Cameron was in Egypt, and he's in his bed, and he's just totally, the guy's a wreck. You'd be like that. but we're not. We love ourselves. We take the time to get presentable. No matter how, I brush my hair, it just happens to be on my face, right? And you get the things ready that you need to get ready. Because we do love ourselves. Nobody ever hated his own flesh. The ability to love God and our neighbor makes love the fulfillment of the law. That's what it is. This is what Jesus is telling him, which is also what Paul wrote in Romans chapter 13, verse 8 and 10. Owe no one anything except to love one another. For he who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet. And if there's any other commandment, all are summed up in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. Understand, if Jesus is telling him, look, first of all, Israel, first of all, you and me, we need to know God, right? Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You need to know him. Then you need to love him with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then on top of that, you need to love your neighbor. And if you're doing that, if you know God and you love God, then you're going to love your neighbor. And if you love your neighbor, then you're going to do all these other things that are in the 10 Commandments. All the other 8, after the first 2, you are going to do if you love God and love your neighbor. Because if you love your neighbor, you don't want to steal from him, right? You don't want to commit adultery. You don't want to murder them. You don't want to covet what they have. We don't want to do those things. So all of the other commandments, all this nonsensical 613 laws, all of that, if you are doing the first 2 things because you know God first, then all the rest are going to fall in line. You know God, love your neighbor, and you're going to do what it is that God desires. You're going to treat people the way God wants you to treat them. The way that we truly love one another, the way we ought to, is by loving God first. In verses 32 and 33, the scribe endorses what it is that Jesus says, which is amazing, right? A lawyer actually agreeing with, somebody he's interrogating. So the scribe said to him, "Well said, teacher. You have spoken the truth, for there is one God, and there is no other but he. And to love him with all the heart, with all the understanding, with all the soul, with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself is more than all the burnt offerings and sacrifices, more than anything that we can do in the law, more than anything that's described in the Torah. Loving God is more than the sacrifices that we make, whether they're at that time animal sacrifices, and like today, just sacrificing things because we think it makes us closer to God, right? How many people in the Catholic faith observe Lent every single year religiously? I knew a guy when I used to work auto wrecking. He was just a complete and utter jerk. Drunk all year long. Came to work drunk. And if you're operating a crane and a forklift when you're drunk or hungover, that's not good. And so he's just this horrible human being. But that 40 days of Lent, when he gave up drinking, he was the best guy ever. Like, where's that guy all year long? I take this guy all year long and 40 days of you being horrible. I mean, that would be much better. But it's religious. I'm going to give up this for God because I think I'm earning my way into heaven. The scribe recognized in that moment that burnt offerings in verse 33 and sacrifices meant absolutely nothing. if he didn't acknowledge the one true and living God. If you don't acknowledge God, if you're not living for God, it doesn't matter what you give up. And when you do give something up for the Lord, it's because he's going to prompt you, right? He's going to lead you down that path. He's not going to make you give up something or force you to give up something in order to earn favor with him. But if you're walking with him and he calls upon you to give something up for him, then you do that. You willfully do it. Not out of religious duty, but out of love. Again, this was an incredible thing for the scribe to admit, because the religious Jews placed ritual observance ahead of moral imperatives every time. Every single time. You could see them as you would have people who were sick all around the temple, and they would avoid them. The religious would avoid them like the plague because they did not want to be unclean, ceremonially speaking. What did Jesus and his disciples do? Boop, put hands right on them, right? Because they cared nothing for ritual observance. What they cared about and loved were the people. And that's what they did. It doesn't matter, look. It does not matter if you attend church, you give money, you do whatever all the time religiously, if you have no concern for your neighbor and what's going on with them. It doesn't matter. Jesus takes the way we treat people far greater than what we claim to sacrifice for him. That's, something that he actually lays out here in verse 34 for this guy, right? Jesus encourages this scribe. So this scribe came to this realization that what Jesus was saying concerning loving God and loving your neighbor, and he understood that, and that is just right on. What you just said, he was already heard how great Jesus answered the Sadducees with their ridiculous question. And then he asked his own ridiculous question. Well, not really ridiculous, but you know what I mean. A question he should have known the answer to. And then he turns around and realizes, man, I've been so foolish all this time. And he tells Jesus in verse 34, or Jesus tells him rather, but when Jesus saw that he answered wisely, he said to him, you are not far from the kingdom of God. But after that, no one dared question. And so the willingness of the scribe to humble himself a couple verses earlier, and then Jesus seeing how he had humbled himself, recognizing that and telling him, man, you are like right there. You are on the cusp of the kingdom. You are right in that moment. I'm also going to point out, it's interesting that Jesus didn't jump down his throat and ask him, do you accept me as my Lord and your Lord and Savior? He didn't do that, right? He's letting the Spirit work in this guy's life, right? Giving him that moment to absorb what he had just heard. Giving him that encouragement that he's not far from the kingdom of God. And you're right there. Giving him the opportunity to continue to follow him and hear his teaching. It's likely, we're not told, but it is likely that this guy maybe went on to follow Jesus, to be one of his disciples. Not in the 12 sense, but in the many sense, right? Like what you and I are today. Understanding that he's not far from the kingdom of God, that encouragement, that positive thing that Jesus, tells him. He didn't say, man, you're so close to the kingdom, but man, all that stuff you believe is just ridiculous. You need to stop. He didn't go into that. He just, man, you're right there. Jesus recognized he had recognized what Jesus had said was true. Which led to Jesus praising him challenging the man to continue to seek after the truth. Listen, we all got saved at a certain point. Some of us have been saved much longer than others, but none of us ever stops learning. None of us have arrived yet. And so, those who are not far from the kingdom of God, those who are new to the kingdom of God, they need encouragement. They need somebody to come alongside and put their arm around them and tell them, hey, you got questions about things? I'll help you. Whatever I can do. This is the heart. This is the heart of Jesus and him telling us that our love for God is going to be manifest in our love for one another. This is what he wants for us. He doesn't want us to become like the religious who are ignorant of what is really important. Loving God, loving others. And bringing that together to a place where we can encourage and build up one another in the faith. So, Father, we thank you for this time, and God, just for your word as it speaks to us and encourages us. Lord, you don't come after us, and you don't, try and deal with us in a place where we're not at. You deal with us exactly where we're at. And sometimes it's just a need of encouragement, need of a little bit of comfort. Other times it's, if you've been a Christian for any length of time, it's a need of a little rebuke, a little correction. And so God, we thank you that, while the heart of the Sadducees was to lay hold of Jesus and to, deal with him for saying things they disagreed with, that the heart of this scribe was open to hearing what it was that Jesus had to say, and that Jesus encouraged him. And so God, we thank you for this time. We ask that you continue to speak to us, Lord. Continue to help us to have our relationship right with you, and that we would love one another. So God, we thank you. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.